Anyway, the one that's energy is the little green one, the dark green one under the light green one. And what you can see is the trend over time is that we're not spending a lot of money at the national level on energy research, certainly not renewable energy research. The other thing has to do with the tax credit, the production tax credit in the United States. And what happened is every other country uses these tax credits to catalyze the industry. We have done it here too, but we renew it on a 1-year basis, 2-year basis, and you can see the results of that in terms of investment. In this one, it looks at wind capacity. So we're on a little better ground now. One of the things that the Democrats did with the stimulus package that was instituted under when Bush was still in office was to renew that tax credit for 8 years. But it's only one of a few policies that we need to be a leader. What we're doing now in the United States in terms of promoting renewable energy is basically leaving it up to the states. And this is something, and the cities. So what we have is states competing against each other to try to attract foreign wind and solar companies to come. And so they're competing against each other, and they're competing against other countries. And it's really hard to compete. When I mentioned the feed-in tariff, we don't have that except in a few states in the United States. What we have is the renewable portfolio standard. And as you can see, the idea is that you tell your utilities that by a certain point in time, you have to buy a certain percentage of your energy from renewable sources. And you can see those vary considerably. It's a very political process negotiating those. Illinois has coal in its renewable portfolio standard, so does Pennsylvania. Some of them have nuclear in them. They vary a lot, but some states have none. There is a portfolio standard in the energy bill right now. If it ever gets passed, and if it does get passed, it'll be a very weak one. So the two main mechanisms, or the three, the production tax credit, the portfolio standard, the feed-in tariff, our country doesn't use. And that's why when you see that list of top producers, we aren't on it. This just shows the potential capacity from those state standards. And you can see the big one is California, which California was a leader very early on. But surprisingly, just like Germany, you see in New Jersey, this yellow line is New Jersey here, that one doesn't necessarily have to have the resource. Germany has the wind resource of the state of North Dakota. And it's not exactly, particularly in the north, the sunniest place. Yet they're one of the leading exporters of this technology because they use policy to create this industry. So we do have the potential, even in states we wouldn't think of as being leaders. But again, we need a national policy. So as I was ending the book, I wrote in another issue of the American Prospect called Made in the USA, because just as this wasn't the book I intended to write, the findings weren't the findings I thought necessarily. I end with a chapter about industrial policy and manufacturing, which is kind of an odd place to be when your book is called Emerald Cities. But what I was finding is that we are not competing, as I've mentioned several times, and particularly looking at China. So what we have right now is finally with the stimulus package under Obama, we've got quite a bit of investment going into renewable energy. But there's even here, because we don't have the capacity, we're not creating the number of jobs we could. So one of the big controversies was that if we look at the stimulus money that went into production of solar and wind, one that was particularly controversial was $450 million went to support a Texas wind farm it was a huge, a 648 megawatt wind farm, developed in cooperation with the Chinese company Shenyang Power. Trouble is, all the jobs, all the solar jobs were going to be in China. And so finally, Senator Chuck Schumer got activated a lot of people to say, hey, wait a minute, this is supposed to be a stimulus to create jobs in the United States. And what they did was the company agreed to build a facility here, so about 15% of the jobs now are going to be in the United States. If we look at what we're competing against, China is more than triple the amount of spending on renewable research that we do and development. They have raised tariffs on imported wind turbines, dramatically reduced import duties on components, and increased the domestic content requirements on their projects. Again, we aren't doing that, obviously, in our agenda. Right now, China is spending $221 billion of their $586 billion stimulus package on renewable energy. And when I was writing, they were poised to take over Germany and Japan as the leader, and that has happened since the book has come out. And so I conclude that if we're going to be serious, not only about solar energy, wind energy, but also transportation technologies, producing passenger rail cars for the high-speed rail that we're going to be developing, for the streetcars that many cities are developing, we really have to have a serious national industrial policy. And we aren't there. One of the encouraging signs is that President Obama has appointed Ron Bloom as his manufacturing czar. I was at a dinner with him a couple of months ago, and one of the interesting things he pointed out is he's not allowed to use the word industrial policy. So one has to wonder how serious we are about it. So although I think cities like Chicago are doing amazing things, I think Chicago has experienced some of the same problems trying to create a solar manufacturing industry here. You can be doing great work on climate change and on sustainability, but if we don't have a national policy, a national industrial policy, we are going to lose out on developing all of these technologies and creating the jobs that are going to be driving the international economy for the next 20, 50, 100 years. Thank you.